Power Rangers has always been about 5 or 6 ordinary teenagers who somehow, some way became empowered with these incredible abilities, whether it's through gems or finding some sort of artifact or something to become the Power Rangers. And they end up fighting some huge bad guy, whether it's from outer space or from the middle of the earth or from wherever, and saving the world from giant robots. And that's basically Power Rangers in a nutshell, all 20 seasons.
I'd started at Saban Entertainment back in the late 80s, 88, as a story editor, working, because they were doing a lot of anime at the time, and I had a background in anime. And so I started there working mostly in story and in scripting and doing a little directing. And since I'd started my career as a voice actor, I'd done a little of that too. Ultimately, I kind of worked my way up into associate producer position and started working with development. And at that time, the way it worked at Saban is when we had a new project to develop, Chaim would call in a group of the creatives that worked there, and we'd kind of hammer things out, and then one of us would take off with it. And it just happened to be my turn. And so that's what I'd been doing up to that point, and until the meeting where I met with Chaim and Ellen Levy-Sarnoff, and Chaim showed us this strange footage with people jumping around in spandex and latex monsters, and told us he wanted us to make a show.
I started actually as Jason Frank's acting coach. They brought him in to do the Green Ranger series, and he was just supposed to be in these 5 episodes and be the Green Ranger. And I was in an acting class with the wife of the executive producer of the show, and they needed someone to be the acting coach, and I happened to be around at the time, and they said, do you want to come down and do this? So I went down to the set, stayed on set for a couple of weeks coaching Jason, and then they found out I could write, and so I started writing scripts for Power Rangers. And I think the first script I ever wrote was a giant flea monster, if I remember correctly. And it just went on from there. I started writing more episodes, and then eventually took over the show as the executive producer.
Obviously, I don't think there's a person alive in the world who doesn't know what Power Rangers is. In terms of my obsession with it, it was relatively minimal. I saw the first season when it came out, just out of curiosity. I mean, obviously, the target age group was very young, and I was already in Hollywood. I was, an adult, per se. But it was the kind of thing I was into, so I wanted to check it out. But I worked a lot. I didn't really have time to follow all the way through. The movie came through my shop. There was some stuff that was made for that and then shipped to Australia. But it was just a very popular thing that I was aware of, but not something that I followed all the time.
I used to watch the show before I got hired on it. It was in 1993, and it was a worldwide phenomenon. People loved it, and I was flipping channels and I saw it, and I stopped and I was like, what is this? It's so crazy. It was all the things I loved. Rubber monsters, superheroes. It was really fun and cheesy. And then, fortunately, I got hired on the show by Doug Sloan, who was a story editor at the time. I went to interview, and I was so excited. All the suits were there, and I wanted the job so badly. And when I got hired, I was super excited. I was so happy to be on the show.
This isn't exactly the mall, is it?
This place is magnificent.
I don't get it. How'd we end up here?
I just want to know where here is.
We had to hire writers, which was interesting because do we hire animation writers? Do we hire anime writers? Do we hire live action writers? And we went through a lot of different machinations of that and kind of hired a little bit of each. We had some live action writers. We had some people that I'd worked with in the anime world who were also working. We had a couple of original animation writers as well. And had to sit down and really kind of teach ourselves how to write this show in such a way that it would work.
Babu, is the time device ready, or have you messed it up?
No, I mean, I managed to get it ready, even though Lunkhead here slowed me down.
Now that looks okay.
It's all programmed. It'll fly down to Earth.
And wherever it lands, it'll open up a hole in time.
Finster's monster will trap them in the hole, and they'll be gone forever.
We'd have the most ridiculous conversations sometimes that I couldn't believe adults were having. I remember before we shot the pilot, it was a Memorial Day weekend, and I had taken my kids up to see my dad, and because my wife was taking finals, so she needed time alone. And we were sitting by the pool on Memorial Day, and I get my mother, my dad's wife, came walking up and said, "There's a man named Hallam or Whoam." I said, "Hyam" on the phone. He said, "Yeah." I thought he was on vacation. And so I got out of the pool, and I answered the phone, and he was on vacation. He was calling me from Greece because he needed to discuss right then and there whether Squat and Babu should speak or just babble. So these are the kind of conversations we had. And when none of us knew, how to do this. I mean, we were kind of inventing a new kind of show and trying to bridge a big cultural gap.
It all comes out of the Japanese footage. So you look at whatever footage they give you, and you get your idea from that Japanese footage. So for the flea episode, for example, it was one of the kids adopts a dog, there's a flea on it, and it becomes a monster, blah, blah, blah. So you always sort of look for what's the monster, and how do I take that and make a story out of it.
Well, there's certain requirements, and there's a certain format. As you know, third act Megazord fight almost in every episode. Some episodes you have to stick closer to the footage and you have to use a certain amount of footage to make the budget. Some you have more latitude to do your own story and develop the characters more. So throughout the season, you have to kind of mix and match. Sometimes you need to put 5 Japanese episodes into this one American episode just to make the budget. So you write an episode that is like, oh my God, there's so many attacks on the city. Not my favorite kind of episode to write, but 1 or 2 of those is necessary to make the budget every year. And then you get to do a finale where you get to blow up downtown. So we tried to mix up our production value with really strong characters and making ends meet using the money that we had at the time.
It can be complicated or it can be simple. I mean, there have been times where it was Thursday afternoon and we were supposed to start shooting Monday and we had no script. And I literally sat down and wrote a script in 4 hours. Start to finish, wrote it, delivered it, sent it in, and we were shooting it on Monday. And then there are times when, it takes weeks. But, it's an interesting process. But like I said, it all starts from this footage.
Look at him, that dude's huge! Back off, Fang Face! The good guys are here!
Get off our planet!
Because we're the Power Rangers! And we're not backing down! Yeah!
Plus, the production schedule was such that we had to have at least 15 episodes written before we started rolling cameras. So it was quite a daunting task because we did the pilot in October, we got the go-ahead in November, and we had to be rolling cameras by February. So it was a really fast process. I didn't go home for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks.
When I tell other people in the industry that we used to shoot like 50 episodes a season, they're like, what, are you kidding? So it was a little bit run and gun. So we would have to write very fast, shoot very fast, and do our best to keep ahead of the Japanese episodes.
So it was like, okay, great, giant flea, perfect. Giant pineapple clown, love it, perfect, let's go to a circus. Love it, excellent, do that.
No more clowning around.
It's funny because in the beginning they didn't really have staff writers. We were all freelance. So you get the footage on a big 3/4-inch tape, back then is what it was, and you would look at the footage and you would pitch them several different ideas of what you thought a good episode would be. And then they would say yay or nay, we like this, and then you would start coming up with an outline or a sort of a 4 or 5 page outline. You'd hand that into them, they'd give it back to you, and you'd write a script.
Some writers would just not understand that. And you'd say, okay, there has to be a reason why the Yellow Ranger's not here because that's the way the footage is. And that would present the challenge for a lot of writers. So I think Doug Sloan brought me into the show and he had it down, and Ann Austin was a producer for many years, and they were a creative team that just had the show down.
We met on Power Rangers. She was the executive and I was the writer, and then we became writing partners and went on to produce those seasons. And then we had a guy named Mark Hoffmeyer, who he's been around forever, man. He's just like one of those guys who has been doing it forever, always gives you a good script, really great guy. He actually works for me now.
My friend Chip Lynn and I wrote many, many episodes together. And in the Disney years, my friend John Telligan and I cranked out a lot of episodes.
John Telligan started out as the assistant and worked his way up to being a writer. And then Jackie Marchand was my assistant during the Power Ranger Zeo days, ended up being a writer. So sort of everyone that was an assistant ended up being a writer in our era. And I think you kind of have to, whenever I hire an assistant now, a writing assistant, it's, do you want to be a writer? If you do, that's great, because, that's the kind of people you want. That's where you get writers from.
Out of thousands of entrants, 3 names were announced today as the lucky students invited to attend the World Peace Summit in Switzerland. The 3 youths will meet and then travel with teens from all over the world to discuss global problems that affect all of us.
Right after we started shooting season 2, Walter, Austin, and Twee decided to leave the show. And so we suddenly had to scramble and figure out what we were going to do. It was both difficult and also was an opportunity. There were some issues in the show that we needed to fix. There were story issues, had nothing to do with the actors, but it had to do with, for instance, you have to understand Saban Entertainment was a very multicultural company. If you walked through the offices, you heard many different languages, you saw many different colored people, you saw everything. It was really about the most diverse company I've ever worked for. And none of us thought in terms of race. So 20 or 30 episodes into shooting was when we all realized that we'd made the black guy in the show a black ranger and the Asian character yellow ranger, and thought, oh, well, what have we done? So first of all, it was an opportunity to fix stuff like that.
Retrieving the Sword of Light was your last quest. It was important that you be successful, and because you were, the Power Rangers will endure. The Sword of Light will allow your powers to be transferred to 3 new Rangers.
But who?
Behold, I present to you the new Power Rangers.
Rocky, Adam.
Isn't this incredible?
It also solved a couple of issues as to who's the leader, because there was always this little bit of tussle within the story as to whether, is it Jason or is it Tommy? We even played some of that in some of the stories where there was a little bit of conflict. Once the cast changed, there was no question who was the leader. It's Tommy. And that, I thought, set up the movie quite well, because I think the movie would have had a little trouble dealing with that conflict, and because films have a completely different story pattern that they have to follow in order to be successful. So no, we didn't try to mimic or replace. What we did do is we had to come up with a clever way to exit the old cast and bring in the new, and so they all got sent off to the UN to be ambassadors.
You guys are going to Switzerland.
All 3 of us?
Yep. Congratulations. It's a chance of a lifetime.
Yeah!
Interesting side note is that each time we've added or changed cast, the ratings would pop up, the toy sales would go up, and so it actually turned out to be a rather positive thing for the show.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, sir. It is.
Take a good long look. Odds are you'll never see her again.
Sometimes we stuck closer to the Japanese story arc, but sometimes, like Lost Galaxy, in the Japanese show, it had nothing to do with space. It was a very organic, kind of animal-based season. We decided to put it in space. So it was our 2nd season in space, and we loved doing that. So although it seems like a crazy idea, I think it worked to some extent. And having that freedom to just break away a little bit and create our own stories, I think made us more creative in the end. And it's like a puzzle, making all those pieces work.
Keeping the pigeons company?
I like to come up here when I have a lot on my mind. It's so quiet and beautiful.
Oh, now don't tell me that you're gonna miss this drafty old clock tower.
Actually, there's a lot I'm gonna miss.
I loved doing the Time Force characters. I loved the Jen and Wes story arc. I thought The actors were great, and we were able to kind of go a little bit more tween love story, a little bit more serious with Wes's dad. So I think we kind of stepped it up story-wise in that one.
How could you hate something so beautiful?
My heart has been filled with hate for so long. And that nearly cost me the one person I truly, truly love.
I like writing a lot of redemption stories. I think for me, part of the core of the Power Rangers is, at its very basic, it's about good versus evil. And beyond that, it got to be about redemption for some of the bad, like Rancic's redemption and Caron's redemption. She got to turn herself into one of the Power Rangers. So to me, that was really fun, added a little bit more drama and a good lesson for the kids. You know, there's good inside of everybody. I always like to make everybody good at the end. That's my thing. If I could, I'd have nobody evil and just everybody good.
Dr. Oliver, I'm Principal Randall.
Oh, it's nice to meet you. It's your first day too, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm still trying to figure out why a doctor of paleontology would come all the way to Reefside to teach science to teenagers.
Guess I'm looking for some peace and quiet.
We were trying to think of a way to sort of reinvigorate and give the fans something that they would be like, this is awesome, this is fantastic, and that's what the Tommy thing was about.
Aren't you a little old for this, Tommy?
I may be old, but I can still pull it off. Dino Thunder, power up!
He had to go back home and deal with some stuff with the karate studio during the middle of the filming, so we had to trap him in his suit for 6 episodes. So we basically lost him for 6 episodes. He was trapped. He couldn't unmorph, and that's how we dealt with that.
What's going on?
He's gone.
Became invisible. That was part of that whole thing, too. Tommy was invisible. He was trapped in his suit. It was all, you know, how can we still have him in the show but not have him on set?
Earth has become a haven for all alien races who come from the farthest reaches of the galaxy to live in peace. 99% of the newcomers live in harmony. But for the 1% who can't, there is Space Patrol Delta, the new breed of police to bring them in.
SPD was the 13th season, and I got called in to kind of pitch my ideas of what it could be. I did some research, I watched the current seasons, and instantly what hit me was a repetitive, even though there was different design aesthetics and different theme lines, there was a lot of the same core structure to the story. And I said, you know, I want to shake this up a little bit. I don't know how the fans will react, but I know for me, I wanted to make the season that I wanted to watch. And I just hoped that everyone out there was on board with me.
They have a right to know the truth, Commander.
My home of Sirius was invaded by Grum. Sirius had assembled an elite squad of galactic defenders. Space Patrol Delta. The first SPD.
Many of the writers that we were working with were very talented people that had worked on years of the show. And they had certain rhythms and certain things, and there were just certain devices that are just used. They're just Power Ranger things that, you know, to get from one act to the other, this is how it always is. There was a lot of staring at me where I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's do this episode in a way it's never been done before. And that was probably the biggest uphill battle and the most work for everyone to kind of come and meet in the middle to change it up.
And bada boom, bada bing. We got the robot, confined Green Eyes, freed the guard, and contained the prisoner. I'd like to see someone argue with that story.
Not a problem.
And you have a different version, Miss Drew?
I certainly do. And this one's the truth.
I feel like there's, you know, some little things in there that I did to just leave a mark that will affect, you know, the future, you know, female Red Ranger, the whole B team, the idea that you can train to be a Power Ranger. I think there's just some contributions in there that will help the franchise stay fresh and grow. And I don't know, I hope that someone's coming to interview me for the 30th, 40th, and 50th anniversary of Power Rangers.
It's morphin' time.
It's amazing that Power Rangers is at its 20th anniversary and it's still going so strong.
When Chaim said to me, I remember, I'll never forget this, we were sitting around and he goes, Doug, I want this show to be an evergreen. And I'm like, and an evergreen means you want it to be around forever. And I'm like, Chaim, you're out of your mind. This show is going to be gone in 3 years if you're lucky. And it's never going to be heard from again. So don't get your hopes up. And 20 years later, it's still around. People are still watching it. People are still talking about it. It's mind-blowing.
In Japan, it's been on for 30 years, I believe. And the Japanese treat it as a great honor because it's such a part of their cultural history and television history. And I feel the same way. I'm very proud to have worked on it.
Even now, if there's somebody I need to talk to and I really want to pitch something or I really want to have a conversation, I can pick up the phone, and there are people that will still take my call because I was involved in that. It gave me a career now that has lasted, that I've been able to enjoy and appreciate and open up the doors to other things.
It is an amazing thing to have been part of it and to be able to kind of carve out my own little nook in the Power Rangers history line.
It really was some of the funnest, most amazing times because we were able to do literally whatever we wanted to do. No one really bugged us. As long as the shows got delivered, nobody really cared. And it was like film school. You know, I think anyone who was involved with Power Rangers over the years will tell you it's like getting paid to go to film school. And it's a pretty amazing experience.